Today I'm joined by Jonathan Aspro, who plays for A-League men's side Perth Glory. Thank you so much for joining me today, Jonathan.
Thanks, mate. Thanks for having me on.
Where did your passion and love for football first begin?
For a lot of footballers, right, it starts in the backyard. It starts with your parents, taking you to grassroots football, and for me, it was also my grandfather, my mum's father. He loved the game. He immigrated, sorry, from Greece in the 1960s, along with all my grandparents, and he had a deep love for the game. He enjoyed the game. He loved watching the game, and he passed that on to me. And he would teach me, some things and show me games, and especially of games in Greece, which I could watch. And they always had a Greek channel at their place, so I'd watch a lot of games there. And Dad, especially, was a lover of all sports. He was a fan of Sydney Olympic, growing up in the old NSL. So we watched so much football. We watched all sports, but I think that love for football came, not only through my dad, but through my grandfather too.
And growing up football wise, did you have any sort of heroes or idols that you looked up to? If so, who were they?
I think like really early on, I just kind of just enjoyed kind of just being out there and just running around. And at that age, you got no idea what you're doing. Like you're just kicking a ball and just running around. And so I think back then, probably not so much. I remember when I was 8 or 9 in the A-League first starting, and I remember, controversially as it was, I was a big Sydney FC supporter, and I was a member for a long time, and then obviously went across and played for West Sydney for 3 or 4 years. And but yeah, I went along to most games, and I love watching the A-League. And so I kind of developed like a few guys that I really kind of wanted to be like. And if I could have, a career in the A-League, then, that was something that I kind of looked at, because I literally watched, every game, me along with my brother and my father, my mum. We would sit around the TV and just watch games. And we'd go to most Sydney FC games, if not all of them. We were members for 8, 9 years nigh on. So that's until I got to the Wanderers.
And growing up, I think every single kid wants to be, a professional cricket player or football player or what have you. But there comes a moment where a lot of us realize, maybe that's a bit far out of our reach. Maybe that dream's a bit too hard. But for you, when was that moment when you realized, this is a career I could actually have, and you actually started to seriously pursue football as a career?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think like you said, you have a dream as a kid, and a lot of kids would have had that dream to be a professional sportsman. Like it's an idealistic job that you want to do. In our case, to kick a ball around every couple of hours a day, and kick a ball around on the weekend, and play in front of crowds, and play on TV, and earn good money and all that sort of stuff. Like that's all pretty idealistic. But I guess when you're like 11 and 12, you don't really see the other sides of it, the sacrifices and the hard work and the setbacks, and having to move cities to play football, having to move countries to play football, and missing family, missing friends. And so all that sort of stuff doesn't really become apparent until you become a professional. So I think the moment for me was, when I only started to play NPL 1 when I was about 16, 17. So I think around that time I kind of started to see what my level was. And still at that point, I still had a long way to go. And even to this day, I still have a long way to go to be the the consistent A-League player that I want to be. And to play many more games in this league, and then potentially overseas. But I think at that point, when I was 16, 17, and I made NPL 1, I kind of said to myself, if I can just keep kind of plugging away the way I was, and for me, plugging away meant like more training sessions, and being more involved in the game and watching more and just being really entrenched in it all. And that's what I did. Still an avid lover of the game. But, back then it's just, I started to just train more and nigh on training like 7 days a week and sometimes twice in one day and, 2 games on the weekend. So and that's where kind of the improvement came from. And so I think around that age, I probably didn't say to myself like I'm going to make it, but I probably thought to myself, okay, like I'm here at this level now, probably one step below the National Youth League. If I can kind of start cementing myself in the NPL1 at that age, then maybe I can crack a Sydney FC or a Western Sydney Wanderers youth team or whatever it was. So that was the kind of dream at that point.
And it wasn't actually too long into your, playing career. You were a teenager when you did actually crack the A-League with Western Sydney Wanderers and you made your professional debut. So for that match, what do you remember about that game? And personally, how do you think you went, overall?
I think to put it into context of the season had kind of been a bit of a whirlwind. The club we started the season really well. We won the ACL and then the boys went away to the Club World Cup. Unfortunately, I didn't go to that. But meanwhile, back in the A-League, the boys were kind of really struggling and we had a lot of injuries. Luckily enough, our youth team was doing quite well at that time. And we had a lot of guys that had the ability to play in the first team if need be. So, yeah, luckily enough, it was a Wednesday night. We're playing Melbourne City at home at Parramatta Stadium. The game almost got cancelled because there was like hail and rain. Like the pitch was underwater for a bit. So finally got out there, and then like I think in like the first 10 minutes I got a yellow card, just like some really rash challenge. And I was just like, at that point I was like, shit, like sorry, I can't say that, but I was like, the pace of the game is just, a step above from where I'd been. I'd been in the youth league like for the last year, and I'd been playing against guys that were kind of my age, 18, 19, 17, 16, and all of a sudden I'm, playing against like Robbie Corrin, Josh Kennedy, Aaron Moy, and I'm kind of just in awe of them because I'd been watching them the last 10 years. So, yeah, and then I just realised that the pace of the game was just a step higher. So, and then my first half was pretty shaky, to be honest. And I still to this day now, I remember the assistant coach. I was quite close with me and Crook. He came up to me a couple of years later, and he said, "Do you remember your first game?" I said, "No, not really. It's a bit of a blur." And he said, "Mate, that first half," he's like, "I swear we could have pulled you off." He's like, you're looking a bit shaky. I'm like, "Oh, come on, give me a break. It was my debut." But in the end, the second half kind of eased my way back into it, and I was okay. And we ended up winning 3-2, luckily. So it was a nice debut. It was nice to win, and you always look better even if you don't play well when you win. So, and then from there, yeah, it just kind of stemmed on, and I played another 9 games that season and one more in the Asian Champions League. So, yeah, the debut was a bit shaky, but we won, so it's all that matters, I guess.
Now, Wanderers, especially when they first come into the league, their fan base was incredible. It was, arguably the best Australia's seen in a long, long time. Passionate fans, all that sort of thing. They were playing at Perth Stadium, which was really small, so you could really hear every single thing. But as you mentioned, it was a bit of a tough season when you first come in. The club pretty much started off winning everything. And then when they started not winning everything, I don't think the fans really knew what to do with that. So what was that like for you, that whole experience coming into this side and this culture where winning was so ingrained and the team sort of struggling as a young player? What was that like?
Yeah, it's a difficult one, I think, for the club. Like, I think you want to win always, so you're never going to be displeased when you start the league and you get your first Premier's plate in the first season, and then the second season you come second and make consecutive grand finals. So you're never going to be displeased with that. But at the same time, you're almost a victim of your own success. And so I think top two finishes in the first 2 years for a startup club was the platform for them being a so-called big club in the A-League. So, and that was the expectation we had on us all the time. Didn't matter what game we were playing in, and didn't matter who we were playing against. You had a sense of, there's an aura around the club and around the dressing room, the players that we had. There was always, big name players in our dressing room, no matter which season I played there in. We had that pressure on us pretty much all the time to win, and the fans were created this atmosphere that they wouldn't accept anything less than a hard-working performance and a workman-like performance, because that was the kind of the culture of Western Sydney. It's a very much a blue-collar culture in Western Sydney, and the people are very hard-working. So we were ingrained in that through Popper, like being a Western Sydney boy. So we had that ingrained in us for a long time there. And yeah, it was hard coming into that season not winning, because we had won all the time. But the next season after was my first season as a full-time professional. We went straight back up to the top, and we finished in the top two. And I think I played about 6 or 7 games that year, because the starting 11 was just almost impenetrable. And being a 19-year-old, I just couldn't break the side. And the following year, we made finals again in Popper's last season, which is great. And fortunately enough, I played a lot of games. But the club, like, to answer your question, it's probably, like I said at the start, it's probably a victim of its own success, because they did so well, and everybody expects big things of them. And even now, I'm sure, the last 5 or 6 seasons is not where they want to be. And I know that, speaking to people at the club and speaking to players at the club, and people I know closely there, it's not good enough for them. But they'll be back there. They're too big of a club not to be.
You were quite young, as we just mentioned, when you started to make your real breakthrough into the A-League. You mentioned on debut facing people like, Socceroo, Josh Kennedy, Aaron Moy, all that sort of thing, and just a step up in like intensity and difficulty. But was there a player that really stood out to you, being a defender, that when you first faced them, you thought, man, this guy's big time, a player that goes you real hassle, that was just a real handful and you just couldn't get near?
Yeah, if I have to, this is going to go on the club page, so pump up his tires a little bit. But when I played against Bruno Fornaroli, I think watching him on TV, I kind of thought, okay, like, scores a few goals, and let's see if I can stop him. But I think playing against him was just a different beast. Especially the way he held the ball up and brought people into the game, and just the way he was able to kind of manipulate you into moving somewhere you didn't want to be, and putting you in a position as a defender you didn't want to be. And at a young age, it was really good for me to be exposed to strikers like that, because I learned quickly that if I was going to play against someone like him, and I'm still learning every day here, like, every day at training he'll do some new trick on me and nutmeg me, or put it on his right foot and put it in the top corner. And then, so I'm still learning now to this day. Like, he's still that player that I knew when I played against him at West Sydney and at my other clubs. But he was a player that I had to get to grips with really quickly, or else he'd make me look really silly, and he did many times. He did many times, and I feel that in my development was accelerated kind of playing against guys like that. And I think it's just one off the top of my head, but he's one of kind of many that I've played against, that I know that I always need to be kind of aware of, and just thank God he's on my team now.
And after leaving Western Sydney Wanderers, you joined Central Coast Mariners, who at the time they were particularly struggling. But when you first decided to leave Western Sydney, the club where you made your debut and you had a couple of seasons playing, semi-consistent football, how difficult of a decision was that for you?
Yeah, it was really hard. I think I had just I just did my ACL, so I just had a reconstruction on my knee. So the club, and at the time I was so obviously coming off contract, and the club had offered me a new deal at the time, and it was a decision that I made based on kind of wanting a new start. I'd been there, youth team and first team cumulatively over 4 years, and it was based off just trying to go somewhere else um, and playing somewhere else off the back of my injury, of course, and just creating a new start for me. So, going to the Mariners, I thought, hindsight's a wonderful thing. I thought at the time that, Mike Mulvey came in and we had put together actually a pretty good squad, what was on paper. And, it was, like you said, it was a hard decision for me to leave, because I look back now and I think, if you always have those questions. If you stay, like, what would have happened? And but honestly, I'm always comfortable with every decision and the moves that I've made to each club. It's been in the best interest of me at that particular time, and it's very easy to kind of look back and say, oh, if you did this, and if you stayed here, and or if you left there. And it was a hard decision, but it was a decision that I made based on just having a fresh start and going somewhere where I'm not, at the Mariners, where I'm not known at all, and trying to be a different sort of player in that club.
And speaking of fresh starts, after the Mariners, you went to a brand new club. Well, at the time, they were
Yeah.
brand new, Western United. When you first signed for them, when they first sort of, signaled their interest to you, did you have any hesitation with signing for this brand new club that had absolutely nothing, like history wise, no players, no staff? Everyone's kind of just meeting each other. Or did
Yeah.
you kind of see it as, this is a challenge, this is a completely new slate? It's, history's yours for the taking.
When Mark Rudin made contact with me, it wasn't I kind of jumped at it straight away. I had to really think about it, because the Mariners, took me in while I was injured, and it's always a risk taking in a player that's done a reconstruction of their knee. So I had to give them some respect on that end. But I think in the end, I made a decision based on where I saw my football progressing the most, and that was at Western. Before I signed, there was already an intention that the club wanted to be a big club, with the facilities, the training facilities that they hired, and the building of the stadium, and the fan base that they were building. But then also, more importantly, the players that they were signing. And before I signed, they'd signed Kone, they had signed Josh Risden, they'd signed Connor Chapman, they'd signed Aaron Calver. So I think before I had even signed, there was the intention there that they wanted to compete, and on followed Diamante, on followed Barisha. So all these guys, like, they just expect to win, and they're serial winners, especially Bess. Bess is he drove a big culture at the club, like to be winners, and that's who he is. But so when you see the club signing those type of people, you don't want anything else other than to just jump on board. So then that first season was, for a startup club, was quite successful. We made the finals, and almost one game away from making the grand final. Unfortunately, that season I didn't play particularly too much. I think I had about 10, 11 games in the season. So while I made that decision to move there, and at the start of the season, knowing that it was the best move for my career, and especially seeing how the Mariners had gone that year, I'd kind of thought, okay, like, I didn't want to finish in that position again. So moving on, but I thought that, after Western United was kind of, okay, well, if I can't play here, then I need to make another decision in the best interest of my career. So, and yeah, that's where Perth, I guess, comes into it.
And with Perth, you signed at first, I think it was a short-term deal just to play Asian Champions League, and then you ended up signing a more permanent deal. So what was that like, knowing that you're only going to be given a short-term chance to kind of show what you've done? Like, what was the pressure on yourself, to put on a good performance for yourself and earn yourself a longer contract?
It's no, it's a really good question because I think, and this is why I'll always be thankful to Gus and the coaches here because gave me that chance to go away to Asia and play at a really high level and try and earn my contract with the club. So I'll never forget that. For the rest of my career, the rest of my life really has been given that second chance. I think it's difficult when you look at from an outsider's perspective and from the Glory coach's perspective. You got a player that's played at the Mariners, he's come off a ACL, they've come bottom of the league, and then he's gone to Western United and he's not really played. So you're kind of taking a chance on someone, and they did that, and that's why I'm just so grateful, and then it was up to me to kind of take the opportunity. The way the deal had been worked was I had still a year to go at Western, so if it didn't work out at Glory, I could go back. It was kind of a loan situation, so I could go back to Western if I wanted. But in my mind, I kind of thought to myself, if I can just play really well here and do all the right things, I know that they were short at the back, so they needed some defenders. So yeah, that was all in my thinking, that I just needed to play well. And there was a bit of pressure on myself because I knew that going to Melbourne would mean probably not playing again. And that for me was a bit daunting in that respect. Like, I'd fight for my position and all that sort of stuff. But, the quality of defenders that we had at the club at that time was, was a kind of a tough one to kind of break down. So I thought to myself, like I said before, if I can do well, play well in Asia, and I've done my end, hopefully they offer a deal. And lucky enough, we got to the end of that tournament, and the club wanted to extend my deal to the end of the season, and then played that up to the contract at the end of the season, and we had an okay season last year, probably not where we wanted to finish, especially with the squad that we had, but I was lucky enough to be then offered a new deal.
And you played Asian Champions League with the Wanderers and with Perth Glory. So, you've experienced it twice, a couple of years apart. And a lot of players really talk about just how crazy Asia is. I mean, some players in Asia, in the Asian leagues, are worth more than what an Australian squad is combined. So what's it like for a player, going to Japan, China, all these countries, playing against some players that are on millions and millions of dollars a year, seeing the crazy fans, not so much with the Perth stint, and just the experience overall. What's that like?
Yeah, it's I did like the Wanderers. I kind of had done it when I was a lot younger. So again, I really like steep learning experience and a steep development curve for my career. I was playing against some strikers, like you said, that were 3-4 times our whole salary cap. So they've been playing in the world's best leagues, and they come to China or they come to Korea or Japan to play, and so we're playing against them, and it's kind of like my experience against some of the strikers in the A-League. This is like probably even another step up, because these guys have played in the biggest leagues in the world. So I had to kind of again, they made me look a bit silly, especially when I first started. Like, I remember one of my first games for the Wanderers in the Champions League, and we played Shanghai away, and Hulk and Oscar were playing, and we got battered. We got battered 6-1, 5-1. So it was one of those experiences where you kind of walk off the field and you're like, wow, like you kind of feel so far off, like where they are. And it's just like, how can they kind of be so good, and how can you kind of be 6-1 down? So those were all kind of learning experiences, but at the same time, like really, really good ones too, like taking those experiences for the rest of my career. And then the fans too, like playing in front of like 60, 70,000, some of those games were just honestly mind-blowing, like Guangzhou and SIPG and Ura Red Diamonds, and just, yeah, crazy fan bases that we just don't see here. I think I had one game or maybe two games here like that in the derbies, where I remember playing in one derby, we had like 60,000, another one we had 40,000. And so, like, you have those kind of brief experiences here in the A-League, but like there it's, it seems to be every single week. So, yeah, that was another eye-opener, just playing under that sort of pressure. I remember we walked out to play Ura Red Diamonds and there's 60,000 people in the stadium, and all of a sudden you just, like, because you've been playing in front of 10,000 people, 5,000 people at Perth Stadium, then, or whatever, you play in front of 10,000 at Amy Park, wherever it is. You go to this stadium and there's 60,000 people. Like, you don't know how to react, especially the first time doing it. So it was a real eye opener, and an eye opener to playing under that sort of pressure and in front of those big crowds, because it's a completely different game to, fans make the game, and playing in front of those compared to in COVID times playing in front of no one is literally chalk and cheese.
And during your stint in the ACL with Perth, unfortunately, you guys were pretty much playing in empty stadiums because of COVID, but you still did make some Perth Glory history, becoming Perth Glory's first ever scorer in the Champions League. They got Bruno Fornaroli and all these good players, but it was you who actually scored the first ever goal for Wanderers in the Champions League. So do you remember that goal? And if so, can you talk us through it?
Yeah, I remember it like it was yesterday. It was my only goal I've scored to this point in my career, in my professional career. So I need to remember it. And I still get shit from Bruno. I shouldn't say shit. I still get some slack from Bruno because he thought I should have passed in the ball. He thought I should have squared it to him. So I don't know where he's coming from. I had a clear shot. I had a clear sighter at goal, and as all good strikers, he's still, to this day, he's still calling for the ball, even though it went in the net. So no, it was. I remember Carlo Armiento kind of getting into the box. We had just had a set piece, and I stayed up because we were losing 2-0, so I'd stayed up from the back. And it kind of broke to him. He took a shot, keeper parried it, and it just fell nicely. It was a really simple finish, but really thankful for the keeper for putting it on an absolute platter for me. But really simple finish, and I remember looking across, and I saw Bruno in the ball. If I miss this guy's going to lose it at me. Like, especially first time ever playing with him. As all good strikers, like, he wants the ball in the box. So if I didn't score, he would have absolutely roasted me. So it was a nice moment. Unfortunately, we didn't win, but it was a nice moment, I guess, after the game, just celebrating my first goal.
So unfortunately, this season for Perth Glory hasn't been the best on the pitch for you guys, but it's also not been the best off the pitch due to COVID. You guys have been moved around, had stop and start, not really knowing what's happening, being stuck out of the state. And a lot of players have really talked about how difficult that is, but I personally haven't really heard too much of an account just on, the whole story, just what's going on and just completely how difficult it is. So, pretty much just straight up asking you, how difficult has this whole season been off the pitch?
Yeah, it's at its challenges, man. I think it's just been I don't think any word can kind of sum up the season that it's been for us, kind of travel wise and all that sort of stuff. And but yeah, to put it into one word, it would actually do it an injustice. I remember in August we found out that we were going to be going on the road to start the season in Melbourne because the borders had closed. We were fine with that. And that was what it was going to be. We were going to do a hub in Melbourne like we did last season. So at the start of the season, we had a first home game, the first game of the season, then we went on the road. So we didn't actually think it would be too bad. So we thought, we'd get home to Perth for Christmas, be free, and then potentially probably do another stint in Sydney, and then come back home when the borders opened. Energy and the vibe was really good in the team. We had picked up some decent results, and I think we had 4 points out of the first 9 points. So it was a good little start to the season, and then we lost a close game to Melbourne City, but the vibe and the energy was really good. It all changed when we we were in Brisbane and we had a reported COVID case. And from there, man, it just took off. Before that, other states were being closed to WA, so it didn't matter where we went, we'd have to quarantine regardless. So we're trying to hop between states to try and avoid doing hotel quarantine so we could do home quarantine. But we got to Brisbane and we had a reported case, so we all had to do isolation according to the Queensland health rules. And so from that point, our season had already been a bit stagnant to begin with, playing in Melbourne and playing back-to-back games with a depleted squad. But after that, it just became, like, what are we going to do from here? We didn't know what was going to happen. We were preparing for Brisbane one day, and the next hour we're stuck in a hotel room because we don't know what's going to happen. And then 8 hours later, we started our hotel quarantine because we had one COVID case and everyone else was negative. So, and we had all been double vaxxed, but those are the Queensland rules. So we did the 7 days and did another 7 days in Perth. Luckily, we got to come home and do home quarantine, and did home quarantine Christmas. And then we got out and we prepared here for 3 weeks without playing any games. So we hadn't played a game in 7-8 weeks. So these are just like abnormal circumstances, and we're playing catch up with some teams. We're 5 to 6 games behind. And then we get into that first Brisbane game. We go down, and you can just see it's our first game in 7-8 weeks. Like, we just look absolutely knackered. Next game we beat Sydney, and then from then we were in Sydney for 6 to 7 weeks. Luckily, the club was able to bring all the players' families over from Perth, so that was a big help for players mentally. But even in that period, we're staying at Coogee in the hotel, and boys are living with their partners and kids in a hotel for 6 weeks, and then having to focus on football. And every day you didn't know whether this border was closed or when he's going to reopen. And 3 days after we got to Brisbane, he announced that the border was being delayed, and we were just like, why did we leave for? So it was everything was kind of culminating into a lot of frustration. But in the end, we do have a really good group, and we're really strong together. And even through these really hard results, and at the moment, the group is really kind of strong and together and united because of that experience that we had away. It's been a massive burden on our season, but at the same time, I genuinely think that past all that, I genuinely think that we could be gaining more results and better results irrespective of it. We can all attest to it, players and coaches, we could be doing a lot better. And I think for the club, that Glory is, and the success that it's had in the past, and always finishing around the finals, is that and the owners said it too, is coming last is nowhere near good enough. So while we've had all the travel and and it's been a bit of an arduous season. I think where we are now is not good enough for the club and where it wants to be.
And on a personal note, all this COVID stuff aside and all the, chopping and changing of venues and this and that, which has really disrupted your season and the club season, when you have gotten the chance to play consistent football in Perth Glory colours, I personally feel like it's been some of the best football you've played in your career. So, what is it about the club you think that is starting to get the best out of you as a footballer?
I think when I first came in, I think Gas gave me a certain level of freedom to play the game that I wanted to play, and would coach me into doing certain things. But all in all, he would coach me and a lot of players with a level of freedom and a level of, I guess, he put the responsibility on you to play well and to do your thing and to really show who you are as a player. So I think that's been kind of the big part of it. And now Ruben's been the same. He's given me the confidence to go out and be the player that I want to be. And I think that's been the big difference for me, is having coaches like that who really kind of take that level of care towards giving a player confidence. And look, each player's got their different experiences with different coaches, but I know with my experience early on now with Ruben and previously with Gas, was that they've both given me a level of confidence and freedom into playing. And whether that's being better on the ball or being a better defender, whatever it may be, it's having that freedom and confidence to do that, which I didn't feel I had for a long time, and especially coming off my knee injury. I know that took a bit of time to kind of get over. So then coming into an environment where the coaches have kind of just let me play in my game and be kind of free in the player that I want to be, has really been a good thing for my career.
On to international football for just a moment. You've been lucky enough to represent Australia's youth teams at a couple of different levels. But when you first ever got into the youth team setup and you walked into the dressing room, you seen your name on the back of the jersey, you seen that coat of arms and you got to put the green and gold on. Just what was that moment like?
It was pretty special. I think, like, I'm pretty sentimental kind of guy, and like I look into it. I look into a lot of things more than probably what they represent. But I think for me, like, what was really important was that, like I kind of mentioned at the start of the interview, my grandparents had kind of emigrated from Greece, and Australia was the place that was the place that took them in and gave them a new lease on life. Escaping the war and escaping, what was a really difficult life in Greece at that time and around Europe at that time. And Australia gave them a new sense of identity and took them in and welcomed them. And although it was difficult for them early on adapting, the people around them, the Australian people, took them in so well, and that's built a life for my parents and me and my brother, and we've had a life here that's been very, very privileged and very fortunate. So that's how I kind of think of it. That's what it means to me, and it means different things to different people. But that's what I guess representing Australia at that level, and hopefully one day, touch wood, I could do it at first team level, but representing them at that level was still representing Australia, going to under 23s tournaments, under 20s camps, and playing against other national teams. That's what it kind of represented to me, was the place that inherited my grandparents and made them feel welcome in a new country all those years ago. So that's what it symbolized from my perspective. And then having the chance to captain the under-23s in a pre-qualifying camp was again pretty special. Just leading out the boys in those 3 games and having a real sense of responsibility to be a leader and do all those sort of things.
And finally, we're only still at the start of 2022. We're just at the start of April, actually. I was going to say March. So we've got, a whole bunch of the year left to come. We've got a whole bunch of football left to play still. So what are you hoping to achieve personally and on the pitch? What can we expect to see from Jonathan Aspro for the rest of 2022 and in the future?
Yeah, hopefully just more consistent. Just trying to be more and more consistent every week. And I know it's the biggest cliche, but that's what I work off, because I know if I do that, and that's the kind of the framework that I kind of work off. If I'm doing things right every single day, and when I get my opportunity to playing well, and then all the other stuff that I want to do in my career, which I haven't had to do so far, such as playing overseas and playing at higher levels, is something that I still want to do. But all that stuff will take care of itself, I guess, if I'm playing well here and the team's doing well here. So I think for the rest of 2022, obviously we got the last 7 games of our A-League season, and then we go away, have a bit of a break, and come back. And I think the focus, especially for us, needs to be obviously lifting off the bottom of the table. But I think for the stature of club that Perth Glory is, and being a one state team, we're trying to really try and get back in the finals, because I know that's the ambition of the coaches. I know that's the ambition of the CEO. I know that's the ambition of the owner, and they want us there. And to be there would be something that Perth Glory has done for a long time. So I think that's for the rest of 2022, is trying to aim to finish off this season as best we can, and take some positives into next season, and then next season really start fast and try and make the 6 for next season.
Well, thank you so much for joining me today, Jonathan. It's been an absolute pleasure.
No worries, mate. All good.